amigos de Pólvora, soy André y hoy estoy muy contento porque me acompaña una leyenda del rock de la frontera, el rock chicano. Es Steve Berlin de Los Lobos, así que welcome Steve, how are you?
Good, man, how you doing?
Fine, thanks for these minutes. And well, you have a new record now, Native Son, so we're gonna talk a little bit about this record, a little bit of Los Lobos, also career. So I want to start asking you, you were part of the Blasters, that 91, that was 1981 album, was very well received. So how did you end up being on Los Lobos and not being with the Blasters so much time?
Well, while I was in the Blasters, we were doing the Blasters were headlining the Whiskey A Go Go in LA. It was kind of like a big deal at the time, and that was the biggest shows that we'd ever done in LA in the Blasters. And one of the was 5 nights at the Whiskey, and then one of the 5 nights was Los Lobos. So it was one of those things where no one in LA that I knew, and I was kind of like a hipster, man. I was on the scene. No one had ever really heard of or knew anything about this band, and like literally overnight. When I say literally overnight, I mean literally overnight. People, that's all anybody was talking about was this. Did you see Los Lobos? It was like they were literally an overnight sensation because it was so different and unusual and powerful. And they asked me if we met and kind of became friends, and they said, there's some saxophone parts on some of these songs. If you want to learn them and come sit in with us, it'd be great. So that's kind of where it all started. And then like over the next couple of years, this would be like 1981, I guess. And then over the next couple of years, I would just do anything I could to play with them, just because it was so much fun and I enjoyed hanging out with them. And to be perfectly honest, at that time, the Blasters were starting to fall apart a little bit. Dave, Alvin, they're 2 brothers, Dave and Phil, and Dave wanted to kind of go off and do his own thing and do music that he didn't have to collaborate with his brother on, like most brother bands they never get along. So it wasn't like it wasn't a big emotional, like my head in my hands trying to figure out which way I was going to go. It was like, on one side, here's this band that's really young and fun and exciting and doing interesting things, and like listening. We had a discussion. They would listen to me, and the Blasters, it was kind of I wouldn't say it was terrible, but I was the youngest guy in the band. I was the newest guy in the band. They didn't really want to hear anything I had to say or think about anything. So it was kind of like that. It was it just seemed like in at least to myself in that era, it seemed like I was going to have a lot more fun hanging out with the guys in Los Lobos than I was hanging out with the guys in the Blasters. So that's how I switched teams.
And well, you're talking about the unique style from Los Lobos. How does Los Lobos were received on that era and right now? Because on here we can say this is like a Chicano music, more like the frontier on the United States side, but maybe on the United States they say, okay, they're more Mexican than American. So how you deal with it? Because it's a mixture of a lot of culture right there.
Right. Well, I think we were very lucky in that when we started in those early 80s, we were still considered kind of an alternative band. So within the context of that idea, the alternative bands, we never really had to deal with in any significant way. Obviously there was prejudice and racism everywhere, like now, but within the scene that we were coming up in, with us and the Blasters and the Replacements and all the other bands that we were sort of in the same scene with, never really a thing. We were just playing our music and finding our audience, and I think that it might seem, especially to a Mexican person, that it would be like we would be dealing with a lot of racism and stupidity. It was more like, because there was so much interesting music being made at that time, that at least to me, it seemed like everybody's minds were open to this idea of a band that spoke in two languages. That we had this, American rock side, and we had this sort of norteño side, and we would sort of mix. Those were just the colors that we used to make our paintings. And it wasn't like we didn't ask for anybody's like cultural, credentials to come to our shows. We wanted people to hear this music and to appreciate the richness and the beauty of Latin culture, which back in those days, like the '80s, like it was brand new to a lot of people, especially when we went to the Northeast and the Midwest and places like outside of the big cities. Like nobody knew anything about any kind of Latin music, much less the stuff we were doing. So it was kind of it was fun. I mean, it was it was nice to kind of open people's minds. Now I think obviously the Latin music is influencing. I think it's gone the other way. It's like everybody's making Latin sounding records, even if they know Latin anything. Like all the pop hit makers are. It all sounds like Latin music now. So the tide has turned. But back in those days, it was it was a very different time. I think people were just intrigued by new music. They just wanted to hear, and they wanted to be part of this thing that was exploding all over the place.
Well, and years later, do you think that the Desperado movie was the breakpoint from Los Lobos outside LA and maybe the United States?
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
The Desperado movie.
The Desperado movie? That's an interesting question. Hard for me to say, to be honest with you. I don't, unlike the Bamba, for instance, where we were, obviously very deeply associated with it. The Desperado movie, I think Robert Rodriguez's movies are so much about him, like his style and, his ideas and his vision. And, certainly having Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek doesn't hurt anybody's movies. But I don't know how much, like what kind of difference our participation made in the bigger picture of, like the culturally. I think, if we were going to talk about a movie that made a difference, I think it would have to be La Bamba. I mean, that obviously kind of changed everything for us, top to bottom. It was, a new world once that came out for us.
Mm-hmm. Then you were on Mucha Lucha. Do you remember that the Mucha Lucha cartoon?
Yes.
It was huge in Mexico. So
really?
do you remember something about it?
Yeah, I do. It was that's pretty funny. Yeah, again, it's like I guess I live in a bubble myself. I just kind of focus on the things that I'm working on myself. So I kind of miss the cultural relevance a lot of the work that we do. I'm always surprised when people bring stuff up, and I'm like, oh, that was like, it just seems like it was 100 years ago. But yeah, I appreciate that. I didn't realize it was that big a deal. But that I'm always pleasantly surprised when stuff that we've done kind of surfaces like that and has some cultural relevance.
And now with Native Song, we're doing an album like this right now, a cover album. There's a lot of sounds we can say more Latino, more like Los Lobos, even a danzón. There's a lot of rhythm right now.
I'm sorry, a lot of what?
A lot of rhythms, a lot of mixtures of sounds.
Yeah, there is. It's amazing, really. It's like I said earlier, like Latin rhythms are taking over the world. So yeah, it is kind of fascinating to hear that all over the place. I just kind of, I hope it's not a fad. I hope it's not something that people are going to burn out on, and not want to hear when it's all, kind of done. But it is really wonderful to hear the cultural influence, go that way for once. Usually it's Latin music being influenced by pop trends, and now it seems like we're the trend influencing everything else.
Which song of this album represents more you personally? Why?
Which song on this record? Well, the one that I brought to the picture was "Never No More." It's by an artist named Percy Mayfield, who was, I think, a fantastic songwriter. He wrote a lot of Ray Charles's best songs, and made a lot of really interesting records on his own. Very literate. His songs are, the lyrics are like often like poetry. So that was the one that I thought would be, I think he's underappreciated. Certainly, he's underappreciated as a singer. As a writer, really. I guess not a lot of people know his name. So that was the one that I thought was important that we highlight his work.
Talking about La Bamba, what was your memories of Richie's balance, and did you like the movie?
Yes. Well, the funny thing when we worked on the movie, um, we nobody knew. I mean, nobody knows anything when you're working on it if it's going to be a big success or anything like that. And we started work on the movie because we were friends with his family. They had they live outside of Santa Cruz, California, in a town called Watsonville. And in the early days of the band, we used to play up there like all the time. It was like not unusual for us to play, 2 or 3 times, like every other month. We'd go up and play in the Santa Cruz area, and they would always take care of us and feed us, and like they treated us like we were part of their family. So when they asked us, they said, we sold the rights to Richie's story, but we, in part of the contract that you guys do the music, we were happy. I mean, it was quite an honor, but we really didn't think, we did not. No one at any time up until the movie was released thought it was going to be a big hit. It was just, the making of the movie was kind of disorganized. The script kept changing. I don't know if everybody knows this, but they couldn't find, like, the Lou Diamond Phillips, the guy who played Richie, like, he showed up so late. Like, they had shot the entire rest of the movie, like all the scenes that he's not in were done, and because they couldn't find the right guy, even though the movie had begun, they did not have the lead character. They did not have anybody cast in the movie, and then finally, like, Lou showed up very, very late, and then they kind of finished the rest of the movie. So, while we were working on it, it kept shifting and changing, and the script would change, and then the scene would change, and then the song, like, our approach, like, it wouldn't be unusual for, like, we'd record a version of let's say We Belong Together, and then, like, later in the day they'd say, oh, we need it to sound like it's in the garage. Okay, we do it again. Oh no, we need it to sound like it's in the Paramount Theater in Brooklyn. Oh, we do it again. Now we need it to sound like he's like it's just him playing it on the phone. So just like every day was crazy like that. So we didn't think it was going to be very successful just because it seemed so disorganized when we were doing it. So we were, needless to say, very, very happy when it was a huge hit, and obviously, we got to have a #1 record from it. But the whole experience was it was pretty magical. I mean, I have to say it was it was an honor, certainly, to for one thing, because we felt the obligation to the family because they had done so much for us, and to see it be so successful and to get the story out. I mean, it was a big deal, and to this day, it's still just. The whole thing was kind of a beautiful dream, basically.
Perfect, crazy.
Yeah.
And how was watching your songs on a big blockbuster like La Bamba?
I'm sorry, say it again.
How was watching your song on big blockbuster like La Bamba?
Well, again, it's just because it was so unexpected. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, I just remember, like, kind of pinching myself the whole time, like, as the movie and the song were going, becoming more and more popular, and things were changing for us. We were on the road playing, like, really small clubs when it started. Like, we would play, like, for maybe 150, 200 people, and then seemingly, like, within, like, a month, we were opening for U2 in front of 50,000 people in stadiums. I mean, everything changed. Like, everything just it all happened so fast, and it was just such a incredible world. The whirlwind as it was starting. Like the movie comes out, the song comes out, and it just started going up and up and up and up, and we couldn't believe it, and especially because when it was first, like, as it was starting to happen, we were in Europe, and this was one of our longest tours ever in the history of the band. Like, we were in Europe for almost a month. Like, and this was before internet, before cell phones. It was when especially when you made a phone call from or to Europe, it was crazy expensive. It was like $5, $10 a minute to make phone calls, because you could only do it from a hotel too. It's like you couldn't really go to a payphone. You had to call from your hotel room. So it was like, I remember getting phone bills, like $200 for one phone call.
Wow.
That was not unusual at all. So we weren't like trying to stay up on things. We would get telegrams from our manager at the time, like, hey, the song is top 20, the song is top 40, the song is top 10. Like we're like, get the hell out of it. Like, we couldn't even believe it was happening. And then we come back to the States, and sure enough, it was happening. And I mean, literally, you could have knocked us over with a feather. It was such an unbelievably ridiculous and wonderful surprise. It really funny, like really, really just very, very funny. I mean, had we been around for all of it, I think it would have made more sense. But just like we flew from Germany, I think, or somewhere, and we land, and it's just like people seem to know, excuse me, they seem to know who we were, like right away. Like, hey, that's the little Bamba guys. Like getting off the plane, like all of a sudden the shit was happening. We were just like, what? Like, what? How do they know who we are? Like, what's going on here? So it's pretty cool.
Thank you. And the song from Mucha Lucha was made from the cartoon or was released special for those albums? Do you like the song? And do you like the
Oh
look?
yeah. It was done for the cartoon. Yeah, it was great. I mean, we love doing stuff like that. We literally just did one last week for another cartoon called
Okay.
Squidbillies. We did the theme song for that. So yeah, we love doing stuff like, especially like kind of cartoon. Like we did there's another one called Handy Manny that we did. Those are really fun to do. It's because the guys, we all have kids, and most of the guys have now grandkids. So we're still very much dealing, and we're in the kid world a lot, and watching a lot of kid cartoons and stuff with our kids a lot. So yeah, it's really cool. We're really happy that we get an opportunity to do stuff like that.
Okay, well, thank you, Steve. Time is coming up, so could you send a message to the people of Pólvora?
Yeah, sure. Hey, this is Steve Berlin from Los Lobos. I'm very happy to have done an interview with Pólvora, and I highly urge that you come check it out and check out our new record, Native Sons, as well. Thank you.